Hi, I'm Lori, an artist and psychedelic explorer on a healing journey. I know there are many of us taking on the psychedelic healings, and I sense it's important we share and light the way for others. There's so much to learn out there. This will be a 3-part video series. This first video is what I've come to learn is my hero, aka heroine's journey that evolved into a psychedelic journey. I believe the hero's journey and psychedelic healings often go hand in hand as one accepts the call and goes through the various stages before, during, and afterwards in integration. There are many parallels. This video is about my art that was my preferred therapy and has paved the way for my psychedelic sessions. Before I dive into that, I'd like to start with a quote that deeply resonates with me and plays in part to the psychedelic experience, in my opinion. Elizabeth Gilbert says, "And Eat, Pray, Love. I've come to believe that there exists in the universe something I call the physics of the quest, a force of nature governed by the laws as real as the laws of gravity or momentum. And the rule of quest physics maybe goes like this. If you are brave enough to leave behind everything familiar and comforting, which can be anything from your house to your bitter old resentments, and set out on a truth-seeking journey, either externally or internally, and if you are truly willing to regard everything that happens to you on that journey as a clue, and if you accept everyone you meet along the way as a teacher, and if you are prepared, and most of all, to face and forgive some very difficult realities about yourself, then the truth will not be withheld from you, or so I have come to believe." Elizabeth Gilbert. That book and movie came out many years before I stumbled onto my quest. I did not understand then, as I do now, the impact of that quest that she talks about. I really like it. I believe that Gilbert's physics of the quest is as much a force of nature as the hero and heroine's journey that each of us takes in some form or another as sentient beings, whether consciously or unconsciously. To be clear, though we are most familiar with the heroines and heroes' journey in films and books, this is not always a pursuit of winning fame and fortune, authority and trophies and glory, but more often than not, a journey of the soul, the spirit, the rugged and often raw realities of being human and overcoming challenges and character, having to do with values and integrity and faith and endurance. These challenges may be overcoming traumas, addictions, the death of a loved one, a divorce or breakup, an empty nest, the loss of a job or a home, and so on. I mean, it can be anything and it can be everything. For me personally, I did not know I was on the journey that could be defined as such until I was in it, and I'm still in it. When I accepted the call to surrender to the journey is when things began to change. And one very important difference between books and films versus real life is that in our real life, our awareness of the journey can begin anywhere in the circle that is considered the journey. And the stretches of time in various chapters can pass in the blink of an eye without even realizing it was a pivotal point until much later. And some chapters can take years, even decades, lifetimes to get through. So each person is unique, And so how to know if you are being called to a journey or if you're already in one is if you're finding yourself repeating the same mistakes and challenges, having to repeat the lessons over and over again. In a sense, this is destiny knocking hard at your door, sometimes relentlessly, despite your denials of its persistence, that it's trying to awaken you to something within yourself that you are totally capable of changing. There is no doubt that the journey is fraught with trials and tribulations and peaks and valleys and the belly of the whale and ego deaths and all sorts of things like that. I believe that my journey knocked first on my door when I was 28 and then went dormant, denied for another 20 years. At 28, I was facing some very raw realities about my nature, my emotions, my anger, all having to do with tumultuous childhood layered with many traumatic incidences from age 3 to about age 13. These early childhood traumas would cultivate into what now I understand to be complex PTSD. and coping mechanisms that shaped much of my life. From 28 on, I had vacillated for many years between stages 1, 2, and 3. And in 2015, I left a long-term relationship and was in journey part 4 to then find myself in 5 and 6. At stage 6, I was staying with my brother. I was focusing on a great deal of this rock bottom, this dark night of the soul I had created for myself. I dove into the artist's way. I did a series of art pieces that at the time did not occur to me to have any correlation to a hero's journey. They were just depictions of my life as I saw the past and how I envisioned this future, this deep desire for freedom and liberation from the rumination of my thoughts. In this video, I will share the images and give a brief explanation within the context of the hero's journey. This body of work is the foundation to my psychedelic healing that I will talk about in the next video. So here to begin. Picture 1, don't look back. I knew I was at the point of no return. There was only up and out and in and through. I face myself, face my life's decisions, and move forward. The spirit guides alongside me as I venture east across the desert to find myself. In picture 2 is anger. It's an abstract digital self-portrait of the anger that has been a main theme in my life since childhood, not only as something I witnessed on a regular basis, but something that lived within me and reared its ugly head at most vulnerable moments. This fear was protecting my inner child, one that wanted to stay hidden safely in my subconscious. She is depicted as a young girl in search of an even younger self, holding an infant self. Archaeologists working through the relics of memories, there is a suggestion of my reptilian brain, that ancient fight-flight response part of our brains that laid ever so close to the surface of my daily life. I will go into that reptilian brain part in another video. In picture 3 is the moon cycle. Being female was always a challenge for me. PMDD plagued most of my hormonal life. I felt ruled by my cycles and remember feeling clear-headed and in control of my body and moods for only about 7 days of any given month. I had deep resentments towards this female body. I was not connected to her and felt enslaved and beat down by her. And when hormones were fluctuating, my emotions ran my life, and I felt like everyone around me just was like, geez, what's going on with her this week? So I was terrified of pharmaceuticals and never found peace within the birth control solutions. And so picture 4, lobotomy. Though anger and I were deeply bound, I wanted more than anything to feel something other than the way that I felt, other than resentment and anger and fear and anxiety and oftentimes just hopelessness. I truly did not see a purpose for my life much of the time. I wanted a new brain, a new mind, a new lease on life. Picture 5 is the mermaid. I realized that each piece I made, art piece, depicted more of a sense to me that I needed to learn why I think the way that I do. There was no magic pill, no magic wand, no knight in shining armor. I'd scared all of them away. And so now it was up to me to take a deep dive into my own consciousness and think my way out of this sinkhole. I'd studied yoga, hypnotherapy, neuroscience, life coaching, and meditations. I had book smarts and intellectualize my way around consciousness conversations, but I wasn't effectively applying any of that to my own life. I wasn't flexing any skills I'd taken so much time to learn. I hadn't directed the lens at me and my programming. It was time to take a personal responsibility and focus on my own shit and take a deep dive into the inner workings of my own mind. In picture 6 is the Mandelbrot. I had learned a great many skills about meditation, and in many ways I was pretty good at it when I did it, but I felt short on commitment and discipline. I knew I was a part of this life force and wanted somehow to become one with it, to find some peace with my place in the great fractal universe of life, but I was swinging from circus limb and monkey thought to another, and it was a really important hurdle for me. And the supernova, number 7, is a kind of visual mantra of coming through the other side of the wormhole to the past into some bright future that I envisioned for myself. And then part 8 is the Rebirth series. And I had many, many starts and stops of a book in my life, the book to shake up all the family skeletons in the closet. But instead, I printed every version I had on my computer and sat in the middle of the living room floor for weeks, cutting each page line by line, bearing the skeletons of the books at the bottom, painting over them as with coal to shape the diamond, and from there rebirth the lotus flower and the phoenix and the butterfly, all flanked by the aspirations and lessons and mantras and dreams of the book ascending upwards in a stream of hope and possibilities. This piece, this exercise, liberated the burden of that unfinished book that needed a home outside of my body and gave it a place for me to look at more objectively from a place of love and surrender and acceptance, and that the past was in the past and the future was mine to create. These images manifested in the dark night of my soul in 2019, that groundwork for the next step of yet another arduous journey. Let's say this was 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There was much more to be done. In the meantime, I had learned that psychedelic therapies were coming available, and I began my research. I was being called by the mushrooms in 2021 with the help of a friend who grew psychedelic mushrooms and an amazing society of Psychonauts I had been fortunate enough to find. I was on my way. I grew my own golden teacher psilocybin mushrooms, and I found an amazing trip sitter and began a hero's journey of the psychedelic kind. Little did I know what was really in store. Sometimes the hero's journey is as everyday human as learning how to be a good parent, a good sibling, a good spouse, a good friend, even a good fur baby parent. It can also be as human as learning one of the most overlooked and hardest personal realizations, and that is self-acceptance and self-love. One of the greatest experiences and gifts of the psychedelic journey is the realization of infinite love that can be had on a psychedelic experience. The only constant is change, and growth is optional. So choosing the lessons and trusting the process makes all the difference. And in the next video, I will share my psychedelic healing trip report, and then we'll go on from there. All right, much love.